Hey story seekers, welcome to Seeking Stories. We are currently working through a read-along of Lord of the Rings, where we break down every single chapter of the book as we're reading it. Today we're talking about chapter 3 of book 2. Yeah, book 2. It's so confusing. 6 books in Lord of the Rings, but we divide it into 3 actual books that were published, but it's all really one book according to Tolkien. But according to Tolkien as well, this is book 2 of 6 overall. So that's where we are. The Ring Goes South. This is where the company of the Fellowship is formed, and they set off on their journey and really start encountering their first new set of pitfalls as a group. And as always in this video series, I like to talk a little bit about the themes that Tolkien was writing about. Consider this. Such was the virtue of the land of Rivendell that soon all fear and anxiety was lifted from their minds. The future, good or ill, was not forgotten, but ceased to have any power over the present. They were content with each good day as it came, taking pleasure in every meal and in every word and song. Tolkien throughout his works really truly emphasizes the simple life, that little joys comes from spending time with our friends, our family, in stories and song, and a good meal or 2, or 10 in one day if you're a hobbit. And even though the Fellowship, specifically Frodo, is setting out to save the entire world, it's these little tiny moments which subconsciously Frodo understands. That's why he's trying to save Middle-earth, is so that the common folk, the poor stupid hobbits that really have no idea what's going on, so they have a chance to live the way they've always lived and just enjoy peace and quiet and good tilled earth and meals and happiness with their family, the little things of life. Tolkien himself was a very simple person in the grand scheme of things. Really the things that happened in his life that one would consider epic or at least interesting happened like before he was 25. He was bit by a spider in Africa when he was I think 3. He was orphaned by 12. He fought in World War I in the Battle of the Somme. And that was it. Like he lived, without Lord of the Rings, he would have lived a life that would have been forgotten in the annals of history. He became a professor and he taught Old English and he helped do a translation of Beowulf, which is really cool. But he got married, he raised 4 children, he lived a quiet life. He had his literary society with C.S. Lewis and a few other people where they wrote stories. And that was it. Like Tolkien is the least quote epic person from the way that this world likes to defend epicness now. He was not a celebrity, at least not until after he published Lord of the Rings and then became super popular and famous. But he never set out to do that. Like he was almost coerced into writing these stories and finishing them in a way. He always wrote stories for his own benefit, but the publisher asked for Lord of the Rings. And it took him 14 years or so to write the story. And he almost gave up several times. It was only really the encouragement of his friends, including C.S. Lewis, that he finished the story. So he never set out to become like this epic person. He understands the pleasure and the peace and the joy, of a good meal and walks through the woods and time with family and a close relationships with those that he loves and cares for. And that's really the important thing. I would argue that that's really what Frodo is setting out to save, really more than anything in this whole world. Yes, he's trying to save the world and save the Shire, but it's so that the little people can keep doing those little things. And in the end, Elrond, the great wise elven lord, understands this when he allows the 2 young hobbits, Merry and Pippin, to go on the journey with Frodo and Sam. He's against this at first. He wants to send maybe someone who's a little bit wiser, like the elf Glorfindel. He thinks particularly Pippin is too young and foolish to go on this adventure, but their stubbornness and their loyalty and their friendship to Frodo really causes him to see things otherwise, begrudgingly. Gandalf says, "I think, Elrond, that in this matter it would be well to trust rather to friendship than to great wisdom. Even if you chose for us an elf lord such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road to the fire by the power that is in him. Even the greatest warrior, one of the greatest elves of all time, yeah, he could help the Fellowship in a pinch for sure, but it's loyalty and it's friendship that is going to carry the day if this quest is to be successful. Because faithless is the friend who turns away at the hour of need." And there's a lot of foreshadowing there that really comes into play, especially in book 3. We'll get into that as we get there. The other thing that, oh man, I just love this part. I almost cried when I read this, and I felt like, I love the movies, guys. Don't get me wrong. The Lord of the Rings are my favorite movies of all time. They can do no wrong, in theory. But, there are some moments I wish that had been capitalized on just a wee bit more. And that's not a knock on Peter Jackson and anything he did, because I think he did a stellar, fantastic job. And you can't have everything. You can't. But you have the sword of Elendil being reforged. Elendil again was one of the great kind of kings. He was the king of Gondor and Arnor, and he fell fighting Sauron 3,000 years ago. His sword was broken by Sauron at the time. The sword was called Narsil, and has just been, the pieces of it have just been saved for 3,000 years, just waiting for the king to return. And Aragorn, through Elrond, is able to reforge the sword, and is renamed Andúril, Flame of the West, forged by the shards of Narsil. It's a symbolic moment for him because it's him accepting, after years and years of being a ranger in the wilderness, saying that yes, I'm going to accept my destiny as the potential future king of Gondor. If everything falls into line, this quest is somehow crazily successful. He is finally saying that out of my long line of ancestors who could have claimed this throne of Gondor, I am doing so. Kind of almost against my will in a way, because it's not begrudging, but it's done with a lot of solemnness. He understands the weight of what he's doing. Aragorn sat with his head bowed to his knees. Only Elrond knew fully what this hour meant to him. And I just got chills reading that part. Like, I wish that the Fellowship of the Ring movie had shown this, and I get why they didn't. And someday I'll do a video on why they couldn't do everything. Really, the basics of it is Fellowship of the Ring had to almost be Frodo-centric, and the filmmakers have said that, just so they have a clean, clear narrative. And that's one thing that movies maybe don't do so well with that books can do. They can kind of branch out and really get in depth with lots of different characters without it seeming bloated. But the extended edition of Fellowship of the Ring is already 3.5 hours long, so how much more can you really throw into it? But there's rumors there's hours and hours of more footage, so I would love to see a bit where we have Aragorn understanding the hour. There's reasons why they also may have not done that, because that moment with the sword does not come up at this particular point in the movie. That is saved for later. So really having that moment here wouldn't quite make as much sense. But still, I get chills. Seriously, Aragorn sat with his head bowed to his knees. Like, you have this ranger, this hardened warrior, and huntsman, and ranger character who's literally roamed the whole world. This person who is one of the most trained swordsmen in the world. The person who has studied and is prepared for this role that he's planning to potentially accept. He shows that humility, not by the fact that he has his head bowed to his knees, because anyone could do that posture. But you just get that sense through seeing that Elrond fully knew what this hour meant to him, that Aragorn feels that weight and the burden on him. And I just can't get enough of that. I can't get enough of Aragorn's character. My co-host for this read-along, Klaus, he very rightly claims Aragorn is his favorite character. He's one of my top favorite characters as well. He might be my favorite. I have another favorite character too that shows up in book 2. The true book 2, I guess, the Two Towers. But Aragorn, it's moments like this that just make me want to literally cry, and I'm not a crier, because you understand the weight of these characters and what they're going through. You just have that humility there that's not a fake humility. It's a character who's gone through a lot and has to go through a lot more crap to get there. So let me know what your thoughts are on this chapter. We didn't even touch in this video what happens after they leave. The journey through the mountains, them kind of getting trapped on the mountain, almost freezing to death, having to decide what to do next. So let me know specifically what your thoughts are on those sections, and I'll see you tomorrow as the story gets even hecticer. Hecticer, is that a word? Crazier, something like that. It gets insane.